Spoil the rich rabbi. Spoil poor rabbi. Top of man, bottom of base. So now the truth is I really stopped in the middle of a sentence last night. Thank you. He remains tar until you know that he became tummy. That's a quote from our Mishnah. And really that's going back on a Mitzorah. Mitzorah remains tar until you know that he's definitely tummy. Now, Ksiv, it says, V'adava b'nidasa, a woman who was, dava, who was flowing, b'nidasa, in her state of nida. V'azav, ezavo. And then it goes on to say, a man who's flowing his flow. Manida matame bo'insim. From this we derive, a nida's matame, no matter what the cause of her nida flow is. You know, it could be she got frightened all of a sudden and blood started coming out, like Esther. Chazal says she started seeing nida. But it doesn't matter, she's still nida. So to afazav matame, me'onsin, azav is also going to be tame. It should also be tame, but as a result of onus, because there's a parallel. So that's the case. How come in our Mishnah we had a whole list of cases in which a zav does not become tummy because it was an onus, because of a certain problem in his diet, a certain problem in his behavior, a certain problem in his health. Even it should be the same thing like nida, no matter what generated the ziva. Excuse me. No matter what generated the ziva, regardless, he should be, he should be zav, period.
And what's internal, we have external.
Why is ziva external?
All the causes, are they all external or some of them internal also?
Both. So, not to feel me Yerushalmi. His first sighting as a zav, even if it's bonus, should make him a zav. So Gemara gives a very cool answer. Amar Nazir said, "L'chshei oseh kinida." When he becomes like a nida, that's when he has the status of a nida. It was really a very fun answer. I think the Yerushalmi, it's only Yerushalmi, not a Bavli, says that when does a zav become like a nida? After a zav sees once, how long is he tamei? 1 day. After zav sees twice, he becomes tamei for 7 days. So after he sees 3 times, he has to bring also a korban. So when does a zav become like a nida? After his second riyah, after the second sighting, second day, second sighting. So therefore, when is he metame ba'ones? Only when his status is already that of a nida. So only from the second sighting, not from the first sighting. The first sighting, if he's ones, he's exempt. It's the second sighting which makes him like a nida. There, from that sighting, and of course the third sighting as well, then he's going to be metame even bonus. Okay, it's a very cool, cool answer. Now it says onsa, right? It says in our Mishnah that he's metame because he's not. Said in the last line in our Mishnah actually that once he's tame, meaning once he's seen it second time, ones sofek shichva zera zol metameim. What are all these things? Says more onsa mamish. If he saw for some reason other than to having the actual disease, I mean, even it could be attributed to some other reason, nevertheless, it's a tame. Sveiko, what's a sofek? Sofek zov, sofek keri. You don't know if what he just saw was ziva or keri, rather it was this discharge which comes from being a zav, or the regular semen discharge. So misafik at me metameim. Zova v'shichva zaro. You don't know if what zova v'shichva zaro. So below kach eno metame isn't shichva zaro v'zov is metame. That's halacha. Every time a zav has any secretion, after it becomes a zav, even shichva zara is metame because it's a secretion of his body. So it means it's elish ain't totally by me ace. And the first time around, if he saw ziva within 24 hours of having seen previously a seminal discharge, so then he's not considered to be a zav, because we say it has to do with that prior discharge. But that's only for the first sighting, but for the second sighting and the third sighting, then we don't give him that 24-hour dispensation. Even if he sees the ziva within 24 hours of carry, we still say that makes him a zav. Okay? That's that Mishnah. Now, totally shifting gears. I don't even know how this made it into Nazir. Hamakas Shmir Makas, this Gemara. It actually is Yerushalmi Sanhedrin as well. Hamakas Chaver. You smite your friend. V'amdo Lemisa, and they say, oh, this guy's a goner. Right? They reckon him and they determine he's going to die. Hekem Mashoya. But he had a recovery. He destroyed. He became a little bit better. Then subsequently he got worse and he died again. Chayav, he's liable. Right? In other words, you put the guy to death. Milchema is exempt because raglaim l'davar. See, there's indication that he didn't die because of the initial blow. Now the Gemara is merely going to change that. The Gemara says, Kinymas is the read the Mishnah is the exact opposite. Milchema poter. Milchema says paters, which is of course what it says in Mishnah. Chayav, which is also it says in Mishnah. But the raglaim l'davar is an chachomim. In other words, since there was an initial oimed, an initial reckoning is going to die, and then just because he got better in the middle, it didn't really take away the underlying factor, and therefore his death at the end can be attributed to the initial blow. Okay? Rabbanan, the Gemara explains, the Machlekes here. Rabbanan Omrim, Shnei Omodim, Omed is normally spelled with an aleph. So here, if you want, you can fix it, put an aleph, but it means the same thing whether it has an aleph or an ayin. Shnei Omodim, if you have two estimations of his prognosis, Rabim, they overwhelm Omed Echad, the two negative prognoses overwhelm the one positive prognosis. And therefore we say that the two of them bridge, even though there's a positive prognosis in the middle, he's considered to be a base. I mean, that this guy killed him. Okay? My time Rabbi Nechemia, what's the logic of Rabbi Nechemia? As it says in the Pasuk, if the guy gets up and walks outside on his staff, on his stick, the smiter is exempt. So it says, where is it obvious? What do we need a possible? You're going to say, would you ever in your right mind think that this guy should be walking in the marketplace and the other guy is going to get killed? Isn't that obvious? We don't kill the guy if the guy he smoked survived. Ella, rather, what it must mean is like this. Afilu meis machmas, the Tri-Tertiary so changed the next word from emda to maka. Even though it could really be matchik with the word emda, but let's change it to maka. And even if he died because of the first blow, potter, he's exempt because of the slow recovery in the middle. In other words, Rabbi Nechemia says that passage tells us that we don't kill the murderer. If the guy walks outside the marketplace, it's so pashut, so it must be talking about a case even where the victim ultimately died. But in the middle got better temporarily, so then we don't kill the murderer as well. Okay? My time with the Rabbanan. Well, what do Rabbanan do with this logic? Seems to be impeccable logic in the pasuk. So Rabbanan learned, it says, V'lo yamusu nafal mishkav. It says he will not die, and he falls into becomes bedridden. Isn't it obvious? If he didn't die, he's in bed, okay? Does he dafka be in bed? Not be in bed. Lamaisa, the end of the post is superfluous, right? Since didn't die, obviously we know he's somewhere other than in the grave. Ella, rather, this must be talking about b'shalom duhu lemisa. It says v'lo yamus, meaning when do I let the guy off the hook? When there never was a prior prognosis of death. Then I say that since there was now a prognosis of death and the guy survived, so therefore I let him off the hook. Or even if there was never a prognosis of death, the guy survived temporarily and then died. I mean, that's really what I meant to say. The guy survived temporarily and then died, so there's no prior prognosis for death, so then we let the guy off the hook. But that's only, again, in B'Shalom Dulamisa. However, however, in our case where there was a prior prognosis of death, even though there's a slight recovery in the middle, since there's prior prognosis, subsequent prognosis, and he died, so they're liable. Says more, wait a minute, if that's the case, Im Shalom Dulamisa, if it's talking about where there was no prior prognosis for death, although Dichsiv, is that what it says? Im Yakum V'Salech B'Chutza Mishanto, if he rises and gets up on his stick, then I let the murderer off the hook. Haim lo kam chayav. But if the victim does not rise, the murderer is liable. What do you mean? You can only kill a murderer if you know that his blow is what caused the death. How can you say we're going to kill the murderer when there's no initial prognosis if the guy subsequently dies. You need to have a prognosis. The prognosis is integral. So therefore, you can't say that, interpret the passage that we're talking about where there was no prior prognosis, and then just because the guy dies afterwards, we kill the murderer. No, we have to reckon the situation. Ella, rather, b'shem duva misa. Must be that there was initial prognosis of death. So im b'shem dola misa. So if there was initial prognosis for death, so do d'chsiv. What do I do with the following passage? It's a fascinating kasha actually in one house. If there's initial prognosis for death, what do I do with the following passage? It says, do d'chsiv brak shivto yitain. Okay, so we're learning according to Rabbanan there was a prognosis. Now, if there is a prognosis for death, so the rest of the passage doesn't make sense because it was prognosis for death. At the same time, it says that he's got to pay for the unemployment for as long as the guy cannot work. We should say Kimli Rabbaneh.
Oh, right.
You killed the guy, right? The fact that he might survive is a miracle. But Lamaisa, what you did is you killed him. So why should you have to pay him unemployment? Now, of course, it would be fair to make you pay unemployment, but we have a principle, Kimli Rabbaneh. Why do you have to pay for unemployment? It's not along the Torah's parameters of wherever you do a death for which you could have been liable to the death penalty, even though you don't get it. But you do commit a crime where you could have been liable to death penalty, we learn no from Ksuvas, you got to say Kimli Rabbaneh. So how come this guy's got to pay Shevis? How come this got to pay unemployment? It's a very good question. Okay, you understand?
Yeah, I understand the question. I was just trying to think it's not parallel. Because Kimli Rabbaneh is physical damage to clothes, to...
What difference is there?
Here it's potential earnings, not actual earnings.
You know, it's punitive damages should be different. It's not a bad answer. So just be patient. So it says, said, it's like a knas. You're right. It's a chiddush here that you should get paid that. Because the truth is, as you were saying, it's not bona fide damages, right? It's a punitive charge. So therefore, it's a chiddush of the Torah that here you pay Shevis nonetheless, even though we could have said Kimli Rabbaneh. That's one shot. That's Rabbi Avo. B'Shem Yosef Rabbi says a different shot. He says, Amar Shel Tosu. No, you say that if you survive, must be the initial prognosis is incorrect. The doctors made the mistake. Okay? It's the doctor's fault. Right. So, so what's the difference between the two perspectives? Whether he's paying Shevis because it's a chiddush, or he's paying Shevis because it's a mistake, because the doctor's error, right? The punitive one is the chiddush one, but it's the same thing. The other side, we say the doctors made error when they made the prognosis. So what's the difference between the two opinions? In a case where he got recovered somewhat, then he got worse, umeis, and he died. Who says that nonetheless you got to give, that it's a chiddush you have to give. Im nosan, if he paid, he paid. Lo nosan, if he didn't pay, then still it should be tzarech sheet, and he still got to pay, right? This is a case where he was instead of maushit, it should be tzarech sheet, right? So it's, in other words, since it's a case where he got recovered somewhat, and then he died, so he say for that time that he recovered, they have to pay Shevis. Now, I'm not sure exactly how to square the way with our Mishnah, to be honest with you, because our Mishnah said that in that case, the Chachamim said we actually put the guy to death. But I guess there's a case where he recovered so much that, and there was a time which it was enough that we pattered the fellow from death, because, well, it's not, actually, it's I'm just, as I'm thinking it through, I realize that's obviously the answer. Because Chachamim also concede that where there was a true recovery in the middle, that we don't put the murderer to death. What Chachamim said is if you have sandwiched Omodim, right? You have a sandwich of prognosis for death. Then you have a recovery, then another prognosis for death. So we say that those two prognoses bridge over the middle prognosis. But let's say you had a prognosis for death, then he survived, then he died without a second prognosis. So Nakizim Rabbanan would agree that we can't kill the murderer because we never determined whether ultimately the death was because of the initial blow, right? We need to have sandwiched by prognoses the middle recovery. But let's say the guy had a prognosis for death, then he recovered, then all of a sudden he dropped dead regardless. So in that case, if you hold Shevis, it's a Chiddush. So in that case, Lamaisa, he's got to pay the Shevis, right? Because he in this case, even though the guy died, we say, despite any potential issue of Kinley Rabbineh, so nevertheless you have to pay, right? That doesn't matter, that's a Chiddush. However, Ma'alim Omachol toes, but the opinion holds that that the issue is really what about whether the original prognosis was a mistake. Why would you pay Shevis? Because it turns out the original prognosis is a mistake. In this case, Lo Nasan, if he hasn't paid, Ein Omrim to Lo Sheyitain. We don't say that he has to pay, because we might say in this case, I mean, the guys might say, you don't know the prognosis was not originally true. Maybe the prognosis was true. Maybe he died. You didn't determine whether the prognosis was true or not. So therefore he comes and says, the murderer comes and says, I might be a murderer, but I don't have to pay money. Because might be the fact he died indicates that the original prognosis was true. So therefore, I don't have to give Shevis. Because again, he doesn't hold the punitive damage for it. So it's only if we know the doctors made a mistake. The doctors didn't necessarily make a mistake. Okay? Nasan Maushiyito. What if he paid, can he take back the money? In other words, in that case he says, look, beforehand you held I wasn't a murderer, that you made a mistake in the prognosis. So that's why I paid. But now, Baruch Hashem, I came out that I'm a murderer. Right? Bottom line. Give me my money back. Okay, so can he take back the money? The Gemara does not actually answer the question. The Gemara just leaves it dangling. Okay.
Is there any time frame as to how long he recovered?
It probably is, but I don't remember. It probably is, but I remember. This is not the right Gemara for it. It will either be in Baba Kama or it's in Hedron. Okay? So it says the Gemara, Masnisa Messiah L'Dain and Masnisa Messiah L'Dain. That's why I don't understand why this whole thing is here in Nazir. I mean, it's very, very strange. Yeah, maybe because of Mason. I don't know exactly what. Anyway, I guess because it's talking about. I don't know. Anyway, says Masnisa Messiah Day, Masnisa Messiah Day. There's a brisa which is a proof for each one of these opinions as to the underlying logic of Shevis. By the way, I don't recall any discussion in the Bible of this sort anywhere in Shas. Nothing of this sort. So it's underlying machlokas here, and we have prices in both directions. Masnisa Messiah, there's now here's a lot of change of gears. Masnisa Messiah, it should be not to Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina, but Rabbi Shimon Lakish. That's Gilin Ephraim Shai Torah Yisrael. There's some Rabbi Shimon Lakish is the one who said it's a punitive damage thing, right? It's a novel idea. So what's the price which goes like him? It says Amdul Lamisa v'Chaya. They reckon he's going to die, and he survived. Okay, May Mosainos Low. From when do you give him Shevis? When do you start paying him unemployment? So it says in this price, it says Mishah Sheyakel, from the time when his injuries or his subside somewhat. Because you don't pay his unemployment for when he's really sick. You only pay his unemployment from when he's somewhat incapacitated and can't go to work. Now, I have a girsa from the Shai Torah Yisrael, and similar to Gilin Ephraim, which is not anymore at all, I guess based on Tosefta, then it goes like this. Hadar teaches us Chidush Mikro Shitin, that's a novelty you should give. Because in Tamer Omed Shiltos Haisa, if you're going to say there was a mistaken prognosis to begin with, Yite Mishor Rishona, they should give even when he was severely incapacitated. If you're going to say that the reason why you pay him unemployment is because the prognosis for death was a mistake, so then unemployment should kick in immediately from day one. It's only if you say the prognosis was correct, right, that he was suitable to die. It's just nevertheless you have to pay, so it makes sense to say, well, when do you have to pay from? For the time when theoretically you could have gone to work. What's the time when theoretically you can go to work? From the time when the illness subsides somewhat. Okay?
Yeah, well, if he's a ghost ace or critically ill, he can't work anyway.
Right. So it has to be that you're paying for the time when he's front time's capable of working, right? Okay? Masnisa Messiah, But again, if we held the prognosis wrong, then we would have said he wasn't critically ill. It was just the doctor's mistake. So then unemployment should kick in from day one, right? Now, what's a misnisa on the other hand? Masisa Messiah late, turning this one around. The Rabbi Yosef is a proof, Rabbi Yosef, that's based on mistaken prognosis. What's the proof? It says, Amdu limchaim umes. The exact opposite. Now here again, all the Gersos are very weird. Amdu limchaim, they reckon he's going to survive. And he died. Okay? So, let's take out the word me'emasai. No simlo, you give him, instead of Misha, I have Ad Sho'ah, Shiyachbi. You pay him from the time of the wound till the time that his illness takes a major turn from the worse. Okay? Now here I also have an additional girsa that this teaches us if he's going to say it's a chiddush he has to give, so it ain't over till it's over. You should give until the time that the guy actually dies, right? Why only give until the illness becomes heavy, right? So you should give the whole time until he actually dies. But if you're going to say that it's an omed shotos, that it was a mistake, then it makes sense. Okay, we give him only until such time as we see that that his illness is severe. Because when you see his illness is severe, so we say, oh, that which we said he's going to survive, that must have been a mistake. Lamaisa, I don't know, in that case, maybe he has to refund the money at that point. You know, the estate of the guy who died, because maybe they can come and say, the murderer can come and say, look it, the whole Omed was a mistake. In other words, from the get-go, whatever money I paid was obviously a mistake. So it says that you give until the illness becomes severe. It doesn't address the point, but maybe at that point they actually can get a refund. I'm not sure about that. Okay? Says the Gemara, Amar here says, Leis kan mishah. It shouldn't be, we don't have mishah. Now here again, I'm just going to change the gears like the other frame. Leis kan mishah sheyakel ela mishah rishona. This is going back on Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish said that we pay, because the Brisa of like Reish Lakish said that if the prognosis was death, and he survived, so you give him from the time that his illness became so much less critical and he could actually work. So what Rabbi Yossi is going to say is no. If it's a chiddush, then the chiddush to pay is even when he's severely incapacitated. Nevertheless, the chiddush is from the moment you hit him until the moment that he go back to work, you have to pay for that entire time. That's the chiddush, right? So therefore, it doesn't just start when his the critical state subsides, but rather it starts immediately from the point when you swallow it. Right. Okay? Now, the next case is also very cool. You call Yado. You hit somebody in his hand with samsa, and his hand shriveled up. And Amin Asio, the doctors say, in Mekato, if you amputate it, he'll survive. Now that's like the Pnei Moshe. The Korban is a different shot. Though I don't see the Korban fits into the continuation of the more, but I'll tell you anyway. Korban says his hand shriveled up, and the doctors say if they cut the muscles, it'll heal. He'll be able to use it again. The exact opposite. I guess his hand atrophied, and somehow they feel that if they cut something there, he'll be able somehow to use it again. I don't know if there's such a medical procedure or not.
The first makes more sense. It was probably gangrene setting.
Right, so that's probably what it is. Okay, so now the question is like this: Ma sheyitain d'mei. Does he have to pay they have to pay for the hand? In other words, you didn't intend to have his hand amputated. You didn't amputate his hand. You hit him, right? Now he got an infection, right? And now he loses his hand. You have to pay for his loss of the hand. Okay? It's an interesting question, right? Let's hear it from here. It says, it talks about people fighting and people fighting. So what's redundant? Right? What's the difference between for fighting and fighting? So, same thing. Right, but in the halachic sense, what's the difference? That's what Gemara is saying. So obviously Gemara is going to come up with a difference, but that's what Gemara's initial reaction is. The halachically it should be the same. Himatsu, because obviously somebody hit somebody as a result. That's the bottom line, right? It's not just didn't remain verbal.
Right. Struggling don't implies physical. The even could be auto.
Right, so just say chinot, because obviously it became physical. So the elitin is so matam lo chinatu v'chiruvin. Why I say both languages are fighting? Elitin is a miskaven al she'enu miskaven. It means that somebody who intended is like is considered to be like not intending. Ve'she'enu miskaven al miskaven. And if he doesn't have intention, it's like he did intend. So it says more. What do you mean? In the case where he doesn't intend to do something, he's liable. But of course, certainly chayav if he intended to do so. Elakini. Rather, this is what we meant to say. He ko al yodo vitsamsa. If he was hit on his hand and it got shriveled, it got infected. Armin Asya and the doctor said, if he amputated, he'll survive. So chayu. Does he pay for the hand? So Kamad Tamar Tamon, and here's where we learn how to puzzle. Kamad Tamar Tamon Chidush Mikro Shitin Mei Vlodos. There it says if you smite a woman and her fetuses are aborted, spontaneously aborted, so then you have to pay for the Mei Vlodos, right? It wasn't your intent. You didn't intend to abort the woman, but you have to pay her, right? So it says v'chinatzu about that, and adds on v'chirivun in order to teach us to extrapolate from that case to all other cases. V'koch chidush mikru sheitein d'mei hayad. Unintended consequences of your action are also considered consequences of your action, and you have to pay for them. That's what I want to say. Okay, so in fact, you have to pay for any end result of your battering, even that end result is something which you, of course, didn't intend to begin with. Okay?
And Shabbos
and Shabbos is that episode. Shabbos only lechs machshavos it's her.
It's like this big Grom and
Garmi. It could be. That's an interesting concept. That this is Garmi. This is a direct result of what's happening. What could be? Okay. Nazir Haya Shmuel. They're getting back to Nazirs. Shmuel Hanavi was a Nazir. Kedivi Rabbi Naroi. Like Rabbi Naroi said, Shneimar says, Umoira lo yala rosho. Mora, which we explained to be in a razor, should not pass over his head. Then how do we know that it's what's the Yerushalmi? Shneimar it says, Umoira Ne'emar b'Shimshon Moira, it says by Shimshon, no Mora should pass over his head. And then we know it's talking about a razor. And then Shmuel Mora, it says by Shmuel Mora as well. Ma Mora Amor b'Shimshon Nazir, that he was a Nazir. Av Mora b'Shmuel, Nazir is a Nazir as well. So I'm not sure exactly what the Chiddush is. I think the Chiddush is that Shmuel is also a Nazir Shimshon. In other words, he was that type of Nazir, not just a Stama Nazir, but a Nazir Shimshon as well, right? Because, Amar Rabbi Yossi said about Lo Ein Mora El Shabosar V'Dam, when it says that Shmuel should have no Moira, maybe it meant he'll never be afraid. It says Mora Lo Yala Rosha doesn't mean that no razor will ever pass over his head. Maybe it means he'll never be afraid. This is the more fascinating thing. All the right narrator said, no, that can't mean that here. Because look, Shmuel said he can't go to face up to Shaul, because Shaul is going to hear and kill about Amoy, because Shaul is going to get upset and kill him. So for Ayalav Marisha Basar V'Dam. So you see, Shmuel was afraid of human beings. So it must be that when it says Mora Lo Yala Rosha, it wasn't talking about physical fear or emotional fear, but it's talking about no razor will pass over his head. Okay? I would assume so. You really don't think it's there? It's so non-Bavli, right? I assume it's Bavli.
Now the spelling of Mora here, it's not like zero, so literally.
Yeah, that part is spelled out. But that's sufficiently understandable. I don't think we would make a big deal of that.
And a mower is a teacher. How does that come to?
And already.
It was still the same.
No, it's the same derivation. You're supposed to be. I mean, it's not the same, but they're related. I'm sure something like accountability. Mora, you're supposed to be afraid of your teacher, right?
Like a razor.
Like a razor, right?
Now, rating is rated 6.
It's here. It's here. Yeah, it's here. Okay.
The previous one also.
Come on, I'm sure it's there.
You have to say that.
Yeah, it's one Mishnah. The one about it, Seif on that one.
Nazir finishes that he really wasn't Nazir. You don't have any, by Shimshon and all these restrictions right off laid out about what you can't do. You don't have that.
Right. That's why it's an issue. But the Kati explains here why it's so. All this Mishnah is about because all issues of Raglaim Ladover. We had Raglaim Ladover about finding too much mace, and then we have Raglaim Ladover about other things. Okay, I don't want to finish the whole Gemara, but let's go to the last line. Rabbi Anna says, Ksiv, it says, Kol harim, all mountains are Shevamader Yaderun, which will be hoed by hose, Lo Tavo Shama Yiras Shamir V'Shayis. There will be no fear of worms there. Okay? There will be no fear of worms eating the crops, because they'll be hoed down. So, I'm sorry. Shamir is a worm, but Shayis is a thorn bush. But if you hoe the field, in other words, if you plow it, then no thorn bushes will come. Is that clear? The Moira. So we say that Ma the Hadain, it says Bizra, which is seeds. But Dachim in Parzah, the seeds are afraid of the scythe. But that really doesn't fit in because we're not talking about a scythe here. We're talking about the hoe or the plow. So the Shayat Eretz Yisrael changes Bizra to Sira. Sira means a thorn. So just like the thorn bush is afraid of the plow, that's why it's called in this pasuk. So too, without reading it inside, so you can use it for the 9 days. So too, we have here the concept that the hare is afraid of the razor, and that's why the razor is called a Moira. Okay? That's it for Nazir, folks. For the time being. I did not read the last line inside. Gittin. Say it for the 9 days, have yourself a barbecue. Gittin. Okay? This is familiar terrain already, like going from Nazir to Gittin, like landing. Okay. How many times have I seen this Mishnah? I can't even imagine how many times I've seen this Mishnah. Maybe game Dina Sayam. Somebody brings a get from Chutz La'aretz.
There is a difference between this Mishnah and the Bible versus
Yeah, what is that?
I have to look because
There is one difference.
This Mishnah so many times too. That Rechem and Cheger is mentioned in the first Mishnah. It's not mentioned here.
Why is it not mentioned? Sure, it's mentioned. Third line, second line down.
The Yehuda's thing comes in here.
The Amudah Yerushalmi Taka makes some point like you, but I didn't pay attention to it because I didn't understand what he was talking about. But the Amudah Yerushalmi Tinyon makes some point about Rechem and Cheger and
The
Mishnah.
second Mishnah starts with Yehuda on there, with the Rechem and Israel, the Rechem and Israel. The first Mishnah in the Bible.
It could be that it's a different order here. That may be, but there is actually a difference. But that's not what I noticed. I maybe give him to say I'm told you my funny necht nischatem. It doesn't say nechtam, it says nischatem. Okay, it says in front of me that I know it's not a big deal, but there's a difference. Right? I don't know grammar well enough to tell you. I plead ignorance. So maybe MD said so my funny nechtam funny nischat. It's got to say in front of me the get was written, in front of me the get was signed.
Nischatem means cause me to sign it.
But he didn't sign. The shliach doesn't sign anything.
That's what Nischatem means.
No.
Yeah. It's reflexive.
Yes.
No.
On himself.
That's what his power.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what they mean. I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's correct. Sorry. No, it doesn't fly. It doesn't fly. Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Maybe reckon the places adjacent to Eretz Yisrael. Lud were right next to each other. It's like East Berlin and West Berlin. Nevertheless, so Yisrael, you have to say Panei Nechtam, Panei Nechtam. Chomer Amim ain't tzarich lo b'shomer Panei Nechtam, Panei Nischatem. Elo HaMevim D'Yisrael, let's bring it from far away in Chutz La'aretz. V'Amalech are bringing from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz. V'Amevim Dinam D'Yisrael, somebody who brings from country to country in Chutz La'aretz. I'm not sure if the Bible actually has that language. I have a Bible here, actually. Right, yeah, V'amevim Dina limit Bim Dina Bim Dina Sayam. That's what it was. Not Bim, not Dina Sayam, but rather Bim Dina Sayam. So Shara Fanei Nechtav is fun in this Chatem. Shingomer Afilu Me'Agmoni even from two. Actually, Kfar Lunim Lulud is not two cities. I'm sorry, like East Berlin and West Berlin. That's Hegmonia Legmonia. That's East Berlin and West Berlin. Kfar Lunim Lulud is a city which is surrounded on all three sides by Eretz Yisrael. It's called the Muvlas, right? Like you have a city in the middle which is surrounded on all three sides of Eretz Yisrael. You're bringing from that city to Eretz Yisrael. You still have to say Farei Nechta, Farei Nischatim. Yeah. Yeah. East Berlin and West Berlin. That's what I meant.
Well, like East Jerusalem. No.
Yeah. Well, that's one city. Yeah. Okay. It's the same mission in the Bavli, I'm sorry.
You're right.
Okay? Now, Zakasha immediately immediately asked of the Yerushalmi, I understand what's going on here. Maybe if somebody brings a document from Chutz La'aretz about a gift, he has to say Farei Nechtam. What kind of business is with a get? So Rishon Levi Omer Shani, it's different because She'enim Bekim B'Dikdukei Gittin. In Chutz La'aretz, they're not versed in the finer points of writing a get. Now it's interesting, in the Bavli, that says that they're not Baki Lishma, right? They don't know how to write it properly, L'Shem, or Ish U'L'Shem Isha, for the purpose of the man and the woman, right? But the way the Yerushalmi is learning, according to Mashbiach, they're not Baki in how to write Gittin, period. They don't know Gittin. They're just Amaratim. It's more derogatory. Now, in the Bible, also there's Ravashit that says that there are no Eidim prevalent. The Shliach who says Fanei Nechtam is because there aren't Eidim prevalent to go because the caravans are not prevalent. The Bible, the Yerushalmi doesn't seem to hold of that reason. The Yerushalmi just has a reason about Dikdukei Gittin. Rabbi Yochanan said another pshat. He said Kal Hikilu Oleh. Now this is not in the Bavli, but so it's interesting that this reason Rabbi Yochanan gives. Rabbi Yochanan says Kal Hikilu Oleh. They put a leniency upon her. Shelo Teyeh Yosheves Aguna, that she shouldn't be an Aguna. Whereas they made a leniency that you need the shliach. You don't need to be Mekayim the get. You don't need witnesses on the get. You just need the shliach to come and say the get is a kosher get. So what kind of leniency is that, right? Vainu Kal. This is the leniency, it's a stringency. You're requiring the shliach to say Fanei Nechtam. If he doesn't say that, he won't let her get remarried. So it's a chumrah you're putting upon her, not a kula, right? You're making her do more than she would have otherwise to do. So says the Gemara, says, no, this is a very, very fundamental advantage there. This severity which we put upon him to begin with, that he must say he caused a very major leniency at the end. It's a major stringency in the beginning, but it's a leniency in the end. How so? If the whole husband comes and claims that the get is batel, we don't believe him. We reject him. Now the Bible never says that. Doesn't say that if he comes in his mara, his shiur is batel.
What does it say about shiur? We disregard the shiur in the Bible.
No, it doesn't. It seems that it serves as a deterrent, but it never says that if he comes and says it prevents it. But if he comes and does be at his mara, then the Bible never comes and says outright, if I recall correctly, that shiur is no good. I think isn't that what it says in the Bible? You see, it's a Tosfos. Tosfos has the Gemara says that the husband's not going to come. The Gemara just says Meikar Medek died below Atzi Ruli Nach is not going to come and get involved. But Tosfos says, what happens if he does come? And that's what Tosfos discusses. If he comes, does he make it possible? Does he not make it possible? So it's actually an issue in Tosfos. All the Bible says is if he comes, he's not going to come because he knows that the shliach said very nectar. So it's a deterrent. That's okay. It's okay. It's better that way. It's better that way. No. I'm not letting you give up. So I still remember
where's that from?
Tosfos, maybe. Not here. Okay. Or maybe it's from Nazir Gittin Daf Chav Gimel base. Maybe it's over there. I don't think so. That's what it says on the side. Yeah.
You remember from the I remember that. I give you more credit than you so much more.
I don't see it here in the Bible. I see if a woman brings her own get, then we don't believe him. Then we don't believe him. If a woman brings her own get, but it doesn't say if a shliach brings his own get. Okay, in any event, so says the Gemara, Raimana Savar Meimar. Raimana wants to say that depends. Raimana says Meimar, Ba'ara Shechutz L'Gufa. I'll tell you true about when the husband has a complaint beyond the body of. Now I'm going to touch this first like carbonated, then I'll tell you the Mashbiach shot. Chazam Sofer has yet a third shot, but I didn't really understand it. Raimana says it's only about Ba'ara Shechutz L'Gufa if it's a complaint of on the get which is not in the get itself. In other words, he gives an example. I forgot what example he gives, which is the one which is extrinsic to the get is to say the get was not written lishma. One which would be intrinsic to the get is to say it was written when the document upon which it's written is still connected to the ground. Let's say it was bark of a tree or something, or that it's mezuyaf, it's false or something like that. The document is false. So one's integral and one's intrinsic, one's extrinsic. So we don't believe in an extrinsic complaint. We do believe in an intrinsic complaint. That's the way Korbanei, but I don't like that so much. I actually like the Mashbiach's pshat. Mashbiach's pshat is that It depends, although it's a little bit wild in the Gemara itself. It says, Arok Shultz Gufo means you don't believe anybody else who comes. But if the husband himself comes, Gufo means here, the husband himself comes, then we do believe him. You don't like that, Pshat? But that's how the Mashbiach learns it. Also, that Raimona distinguishes instead of the next word, it's afilu. He changes it to avolo, which is obviously correct emendation. Actually, ba'arish embo mamish avolo ba'arish yeshbo mamish. When he's not believed in an shiur which has no validity to it, but something which has some basis to it, so obviously they give him credibility. Rabbi Yisrael said, "No, incorrect. Mikayim the tamer. Since you said the tamer that the logic we make us say faneinach is choymer shechmauta oleh mitchila, the initial stringency. Sheyehed tzarchom faneinachdam heikatul basoif. Because that we're making at the end, shimba the irur batel, that if he comes and complains, we nullify, we don't reject his complaint. Have they? From this we come to the conclusion that lo shanya who ara shechutz legufo, who ara shebegufo makes little difference if it's, according to Korban Eda, an extrinsic complaint or intrinsic complaint, according to the Mashbiach, whether it's he himself or somebody else. And it makes no difference whether it has it has integral credibility. Whether it's a substantiated claim or non-substantiated claim. We reject them altogether. And the Or Sameach says the way it works is kind of convoluted, but he says it's since the husband knows that we're not going to listen to him, so therefore you make sure to do it right. There's no point because he knows a get. It has to be given, it has to be given by, it's adjudicated by Basin. And those Basin's not going to listen to him, so there's no reason for him to actually go and falsify the get. Because he knows it's not going to be listened to. So therefore, we assume that any falsification not occur and any claim he makes is not true. So it's like a cyclical thing. But since he knows he's not going to believe, so therefore he does it right. That's what the Yerushalmi says in the next line. What about maybe he's going to sign it with false witnesses? Maybe they even signed are goyim or ktanim, right? Noshim, whatever they are. He's not suspect that he's going to want to ruin her b'dei shamayim. Literally, we can interpret two ways. The way the conventional way of saying is that he doesn't want to create mamzeris. He doesn't want to make Eishasish. Nobody's a Russia like that. But the way the Or Sameach learns, no, it's taka such a thing as a Russia. But he says, it's not enough. He doesn't want to just ruin her by making her commit Averis or have Mamzerim. What he wants to do is to get her degraded and publicly embarrassed and shamed by everybody knowing that she has little Mamzerim running around or that she was an Eichish Mizana. Well, in order to get that done, the only way you can do that is by getting Basin to recognize that the get is possible. But since Basin stridently and steadfastly refuses to do so, right? Because once they ignore him. So then, since he knows that if he comes and complains, it's null and void. He figures, well, what do I gain? I might as well just use Eidim Ksherim. So where the Or Sameach learns is a fascinating way, a fascinating lumdus, right? Practical experience. Okay, that's good. That could be. So the Maisa, again, this is clear in the Yerushalmi and not clear in the Bavli. When the Yerushalmi, because of the deterrent is so good, basically made it so airtight. Not because of the ne'emonos of the shliach. It's very important. It's not because the shliach has any additional ne'emonos. The Bavli has a whole discussion. Does the shliach have ne'emonos kibay trey, not kibay trey? Does the shliach like to aid him? Does he not like to aid him? No. It's a very pragmatic thing. Since he knows that we made the shliach say and make this formula, and he knows that therefore we're not going to accept any complaints, so if he figures I might as well do it right anyway. It's a very elegant solution. Right, without kivei trey. That's right. Okay. Says Gemara, Haya kasabo matana. Now this also something which is not in the Bavli. Haya kasabo matana. This guy obviously was short on paper, So he wrote a get and a gift certificate in the same in the same document. Now I don't know if he's giving his wife the gift certificate or not, but it's a get and certificate of gift. Okay, so v'amar funny nechtam, and the 8 says funny nechtam. So me'achar she'iro batal it's a get. So since we don't accept then subsequently any complaints about the get, do we say iro batal it's matana? Do we say that also the husband cannot complain about the gift either and say, no, the gift was a forgery? No, if one part of we don't accept his complaint, the other part as well. Or even despite the fact that we don't accept his complaint by the get, nevertheless, we do accept his complaint if he complains that the gift was a forgery. So, similarly, we have the same question about the following Mishnah. The next Mishnah, or later on in the Mishnah says,
woven it with the language of the get?
I don't think so. I doubt it. I mean, then I think it would be partial that it's not. No, maybe not. I don't think so, but let's see if the subsequent cases indicate something about that. Learn later on, both the get of a wife and the release of a slave, shoving their equivalent in the requiring funny nechtam, b'molich when a get is brought to chutz la'aretz or maybe from chutz la'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. What about an Eved's release? If it says the gift together with the release, so he says any complaint about the get shiur, the release of the slave, is null and void because they gave the same parameter as the get isha. Irura kaime, do we say nevertheless iruro kaime tzamatana? Oh, here's the opposite. I didn't even pay attention to this when I was reading it before. Here's the opposite question. Here, do we for sure split it up, and we say that it's the era doesn't count by the get, but it does count by the matana. We say the exact opposite here. We say that since his era is sustained vis-a-vis the gift, so irura kaimei tzla get. We say it also sustained vis-a-vis the get. Now it's actually I didn't notice that when I was praying. I just read it the same way I read the previous case. But in the previous case we said either we say it's like the get and the whole complaint is null and void, or we say at least vis-a-vis the get it's not get, the complaint is null and void, but maybe vis-a-vis the matana it is sustained. He was saying the exact opposite. He was saying definitely vis-a-vis the matana the complaint could be sustained. The shayla is that complaint could then be sustained against the release itself. So obviously we're learning a release is very similar to a gift. And now I understand more backs that up. More backs it up in I see I wasn't paying attention. I prepared. Now I understand the Korban 8. I didn't even underline it. I prepared. No. No. Oh no, I was right. Okay, no, sorry. Now, the next case is your case. No. Scratch what I just said past 30 seconds. Now, because of kol...
like a double or nothing?
No. That's next. Because of kol nechosav, lavdo. If you write to your slave all your property, and our halacha is, as we're going to learn later in Masechta, at Omer we say, hu gita hu matnaso. If I write a gift of all my property to my slave, then he goes free automatically because he's part of the property. He owns himself, right? So that's a very similar case to the case you were giving where everything is interwoven, although it's not 100% the same.
This is the principle Gita V'Yoda.
Yes, that is. But besides that, we say who git both besides Gita V'Yoda, it's also who git no hu matnaso, right? That they both come together, right? Mat Ovid law. What do we say there? There. He's saying where there are two separate documents in the same document, then I can say Pogin and Dibura. I can say that just the credibility of the claim can pertain to one and not to the other, right? So you can say the matana is batos even though the get is not. But what about where it's one document because it's a get shiur in the form of a bill of sale? So what do I say in that case? Could get here vura bata? I say it's like a get and any claim is null and void. Or kumatana? Do I say it's like a gift? The yerura kaim and the error is sustained. So the Gemara says this I can actually resolve. The last question. Previous questions I don't know, but this question I actually resolve. Let's say like the following case. You write all of your property to two different people, right? In the same document. And the Eidim were kosher for one transaction and plus for the other one because they're related or something like that. Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Ami said it's Palgan, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lakish. So Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lakish. Chayim once said Me'achashim Psulim Zeh Psulim Zeh. It spreads. The Psul spreads. The Choran Amar said Kshem Zeh Psulim Zeh. No, we divide up kosher for one and plus for the other. Rabbi Yisrael Farish, top of base on the half. Rabbi Yisrael said I don't know who said what. Rabbi Yisrael Farish, Rabbi Yisrael explains Rabbi Yochanan Me'achashim Psulim Zeh Psulim Zeh. He passes across the board. Yisrael Kshem Zeh Psulim Zeh. So, according to Rabbi Yochanan, when we have an hour on part of the transaction, we don't create a dichotomy, but rather we say the hour spreads to both part of the transactions, right? Because as we say, when the Eidim are puzzled to one, they're also apostles for the other. It infects their testimony for the other component of the star. Okay, so to it affect the testimony for the other component of the star. So, Lamaisa, this would be even a case that I'm thinking out loud that I made a mistake here too. This would even be in the case where you have two documents in the same document. That whatever you apply to one, you apply to the other. So if I apply by Avdus the standard that the error is sustained, so it'd be sustained across the board according to Rabbi Yochanan. If by get I say that the error is not sustained, I rejected the error, so then it's rejected across the board. It's either everything or nothing because the whole star is one. Rish Lakish says no, you can divide the star into two as well. Part of it is kosher, part of it is puzzle, so too here you can say the error works vis-a-vis the get and not vis-a-vis the matana, and so on and so forth. Okay? Says Rabbi Elazar said, Masisim Sai Rishon Rabbi Yochanan. The Brisa proves Rabbi Yochanan says, Mashnaim, Nim Tzayachim and Kor Apostle Yidusam B'Tela. Just say you have two witnesses and one is found to be a relative or apostle, the entire Eidus is rendered null and void. Apashlosha, so too, if you have three people, Nim Tzayachim and Kor Apostle, then one of them is described to be Kor Apostle, it doesn't say the entire Eidus is batal. Even though the third Eidus is superfluous, but since he's part of the group, it apostles everything. So too, even though the second document is superfluous, again, none of this is in Bavli. And even though the second document is superfluous, since it's so woven together by being in the same document, so then the whole thing becomes possible. That's what it says. That we draw the distinction. But it's not so unusual because there's Rish Lakish's famous statement. So therefore, just like whatever we'd say by a group of witnesses, we'd say by the witnesses signed on the star. That's what I would guess. Okay? Rabbi Yaakov is a machlokas also between Rabbi Yaakov actually was a machlokas, Rabbi Chayir, the friend of the rabbis and the rabbis. Chaim Ayosar Elazar, one said, Elazar's comparison is a good comparison. Chaim the other said, like you, Lom Rabbi Elazar Yos. It's not such a good comparison. Madam Yosi said good. Rabbi Elazar Nasis Edus Echos, Uchish Echos becomes like one testimony and one with one person. And therefore we say the testimony which is partially canceled, completely canceled. The other one who says not good is not and the two documents are like two witnesses, and the kosher for two groups of witnesses, and the kosher for one, apostle for the other. So it's interesting, even though they're both signed in the same document. But the question is how we look at shtaros. Do we look at each star in the star as a separate testimony, therefore like two separate sets of witnesses? Do we say that the entire star is one testimony, and therefore it's like one set of witnesses on the entire thing? So if we say it's like two sets of witnesses, so therefore, even though they're apostle for one, the other can be kosher, because like two separate testimonies. Do we say that their testimony goes in its totality on the entire star, so then, of course, if they're apostle for part of the star, they're apostle for all of the star. So the question is, how do we look at the two stars? Like two separate issues, or like one issue because of its binding in the same shtar. Being bounded together. Okay, we'll stop here for today, because that's the end of the sugya.